What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was banished and returned as the true demon fox? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. The former third fire shadow of the leaves watched as a being of titanic proportions approached. Even now, with it barely in view, he could feel its killer intent. The genin had all been evacuated, and at least 3 of the Chunin guards in the area had already broken down from the intense murderous aura. The bulk of the forces still there would have to be evacuated soon as well. It was just too strong. Even those few of their shinobi that could weather the raw hate and rage of the beast could do nothing. Their jutsu barely harmed it at all, and any damage sustained was swiftly healed as if never marked. It was unstoppable. A presence appeared behind him. He looked over into the blue eyes of his successor. There you are. Any luck at the front lines? He already knew the answer, but the question had to be asked. The fourth Hokage had led the majority of the attacks on their enemy, drawing back only when he was the last man standing or completely out of chakra, something that happened far too often for a shinobi of his caliber against such a foe. Perhaps he was weary, and the bags under his eyes suggested he had stayed up for several nights. I think I have a way, but it will not be conventional in any sense of the word. The former Hokage's eyes widened. An idea to beat such a beast? How is that possible? Even if we managed to strike a mortal blow, it would simply reincarnate in a few days at most. A seal, answered the fourth. I've always been good with them and I think I know just the one. A 4-part 8 trigram seal should hold it, for a time at least. The third considered it before shaking his head. It would no work. Even with a living vessel it would only hold for as long as the host would live. An inanimate object would be shattered in moments, and this is assuming you can form such a seal. No mortal could make one. We lack the proper control. Only another demon could make such a thing. The Yondiami smirked. I know. I'm not going to seal it away at all. I'm just going to seal parts of it away. The elder man thought that one over. He didn't see where he was going with this. If it was only a partial seal, then the demon would snap it himself shortly after its placement, or if the demon died, then it would simply reincarnate once more unbound. Explain. The smirk held true. Its knowledge, the bulk of its power, and a few of its abilities, most importantly the ability to assume its true form. If I can pull this off, it will be stuck in its human-like one, appearing no older than a babe. He would be different, but he could grow among us, learn to understand us. The Kyuubi cannot be slain, it's as eternal as the world itself, and we know that. But perhaps we can still defeat it. It's like you said to me long ago, the best way to beat an enemy is to make him your ally. The professor raised both eyebrows in surprise. You propose that we attempt to trick the demon into becoming our protector? Into deceiving it into thinking he's human? At first, he sighed, the seal will fail with time. The only way it would contain him at all would to let it decay slowly over time. His power, his abilities, his memories would leak into him through time. I even designed a few safety measures to ensure he's not killed in this state that would have the unfortunately side effect of weakening it further, but it's better than a full breach. He looked the old man dead in the eye. He would be raised as if he was one of our own. I am not foolish enough to believe that simply tricking it would do anything more than anger it, but perhaps if it can be made to understand us. To see the world as we do, though our eyes, it might grow sympathetic. He shrugged. It's a long shot, but it could work. There have been tales of yokai siding with humans, or adopting them into their own families. It's even believed that the very bloodlines so many of our clans wield are generated from those barring traces of demonic blood, is it not? He looked out at the approaching beast. Worst things worst, it buys us time. It could work, the white-haired man considered it. It was true that the rare demon or half-demon would learn to live among humans. They tended to be the rare ones of their kind, and even then they tended to be somewhat recluse. But it did happen. Less than a century ago they had a snake demon within their midst. If not for the prejudice and fear he would have been the second Hokage, as it was he still had descendants there after he had married one of the members of the prestigious Hyuga clan. But how do you intend to seal it away in the first place? I won't, but I will call on someone who can. The yellow flash of Kahona said grimily. What? The old man didn't like the sound of this. He sighed. No human could make such a seal fast enough to hold the Kyuubi. Only a demon can. We do have one jutsu that calls on a demon, or rather a god. The senior shinobi looked at him. You know the price of using that contract. There was a nod. There's no way I can convince you of another way, is there? Another nod. I'm sorry, old man. Looks like I'm cutting your retirement short. Look after him, old man. He will be a demon, yes, but an innocent. We will only get one chance at this. He grinned, so we better make this count. Sighing, the Sandiami sighed, as the man before him disappeared in his trademark flash of yellow. He turned his gaze to the approaching demon. The wind stopped, then shifted as a second flare of killing intent burst into existence, this less aggressive but more eerie. A scream. An ear-shattering, inhuman scream. The demon was crying out in agony as the now visible figure of the towering death god lashed its hand through the fourth, binding it. There was a flare of yoki against yoki as the two demons fought a battle of wills. But it was already too late. The fourth sacrifice had heightened Shinigami's power, and the demon was giving way. There was a flash of light and the form of the attacking demon started giving way, fading into energy. The power shrunk into a small orb that slowly fell to the earth. They arrived moments after the orb landed, watching the crimson power pull away from a now human form. Red silted eyes looked up at them, before rounding and changing blue, as the last parts of the seal took hold. An infant's cries, the sound of Uzumaki Naruto's creation. The sound of the Kyuubi's rebirth. Blue eyes opened, not to the sun's rays. Not to an alarm, or by a terrifying nightmare. For once in the latter's case, but to an all-too-familiar sound. Someone was picking at his lock again. It had happened a few times since he first got the apartment. The first time they got in and when they noticed he was awake, fled. He didn't understand why they had shown up in the first place originally. He had nothing of value to steal. His furniture and appliances were scavenged, the ramen he kept stocked up was cheap, and what little he had of money could be found in most civilians' money pouch. Something much more easily acquired. The second time was much more informative. When the man entered, he had a knife. Not one of the kunai that the shinobi used, but an actual kitchen knife. One of the larger ones, yes, but not the most effective weapon one could acquire in the village. Once more he was afraid when he noticed the blonde was awake, but this time he didn't simply run. Instead he threw his improvised weapon at him. With reflexes equaling a trained ninja, the child raised his hand to block the attack. It was that saved his life. Despite the would-be assassin's lack of training, the blade sank into the boy's hand, lacking the force to bury itself to the hilt, but sufficient to completely penetrate. They had stood there for a moment in shock, before Naruto screamed. The man ran again, and left the child alone. Naruto was in shock, he had a knife through his hand. It was through his hand, he could see blood seeping from both sides, the pain immense. He reached up and took hold of the handle, tugging, then stopped as another bout of agony shot through him. This couldn't be happening. He could not have his hand stabbed through like this, it hurt so much. Shaking with shock, he tried to pull at it again, this time more coming away, though it still hurt beyond anything he had felt before to his memory. Sucking frantic breaths in and out, he pulled it the rest of the way out, blood pouring out of the open wound. He dropped the blade and grasped his disabled limb. It hurt. It was worse than how it felt with the knife inside. But it was fading. His small body continued to shake. There was so much blood around him. He wondered for a moment in his shock-clouded mind if he would die, and that set a new flow of panic through him. He started towards his room, trying to run, but his feet wouldn't accept the commands from his brain, but the pain was fading. Another thought, if pain was fading, maybe he was dying. He didn't want to die. He was only 5 years old. He got to his room, and grabbed his shirt, intending to wrap it around his hand like he had seen other people who were hurt wrapped up. When he pulled his hand away, he swiftly wrapped it up. It didn't hurt anymore, and he couldn't tell if that was good or bad. He sat there, shaking and cradling his hand as the shock slowly receded, still looking at his cloth-covered limb. Why didn't it hurt? He needed to know. What if it was broken or something? He slowly unraveled it, and what he saw shocked him to the core. Blood-covered skin. Blood-covered, unblemished tan skin. He flexed it, and it clenched without any problem. He traced a finger down where the knife had stuck through. It was fine. He shook again, shaking his head. This is a dream. Some weird dream. When I wake up it will all be over. But it wasn't. That was a year ago. So he sat and waited. Watched as the lock finally came free, and the handle turned. Only for the door to not budge. There was a dead bolt holding it in place. 4 deadbolts in fact, alongside a few chains, and a chair propped up against the door. So he stood, waiting with the very knife that cut him open all those years ago in his grip. Not this time. It wasn't the man. He knew that the man himself had left the village, years ago, or died. He never knew which. All he knew is that he was gone. The door tried to open 2 more times, then whoever was on the other side left. But Naruto didn't relax. No, he wouldn't relax for a long time. He hadn't in a long time. When the morning came, he made his way over to his window, and undid its lock. Time to head to the academy. Fun. He smirked slightly. It was kinda fun. He had entered early, thanks to the old man. A fact he was grateful for. The teachers hated him, but that was no issue. They weren't as bad as most of the villagers, and 1 or 2 were actually somewhat kind to him. The other children disliked him, or mocked him, but it was still an improvement. People paid attention to him there, and not the kind that displayed his inhuman ability to recover from any wound. That was a secret he had kept well to himself. He had been ambushed a few times outside. Sometimes he was cut, more often he was beaten. One time he took a blade to the chest. He never found out what happened to that man, but his face would always be etched in his mind. Still, no one of real importance knew of his power. Some of his tormentors spoke of it, but most dismissed it as rumor. He grinned as he raced through the streets, ignoring the cold looks of hate and fear of those he passed by. He was used to them. Maybe I'll play a little joke on the old man today. He smirked, glancing at the Hokage monument. Nah, he did that last week. Maybe sneak into a clan's sleeping quarters and steal their unmentionables? Once more overdone, though always a classic. Okay, that was plan B then. Switch the gender signs on some public washrooms? Hadn't done that in a while. Still not as good as the underwear raid. Sneak into the old Mont's office and lay a few traps? Nope, that didn't work last time he had tried it. Gah, he couldn't have pranked everybody, could he? Let's see, the dog guys? Nope, stink bombs. Flower people? No, seeded their garden with weeds. The Fat Clan? No, he shrunk their cloths in the wash. He shuddered slightly at the memory of the after effects of that event and mentally scribbled down a never to repeat sign on it. Bug guys? Nope, called an exterminator and sent him over to their house. The lazy pineapple heads? Exercise video unmissable added to their collection. Anbu? Nope, he painted their HQ pink 2 days ago. Crap, that was pretty much everyone. He dropped down into an alleyway to think. Most would consider such a out-of-the-way place to be a moronic place to hide when there were people out there trying to kill you. Then again, most people only had a few people out to kill them, not an entire village out for their blood. Most of the time he was beaten or assaulted, it was in plain view of the public. One of the reasons he had gotten so good at hiding and roof hopping. The alleys tended to make those that did attack a little bolder, but it also happened much less often. In his opinion, the pros outweighed the cons. A sound. His head shot up and he tensed. It was him, the one who had stabbed him in the chest. You, he whispered, backing away as the man approached. Demon, the man said with a cool conviction. I found you, Kyuubi. He grinned and drew a blade. You remember this? I cut you with this long ago. But you lived. More than that, you healed in seconds. On that day I knew for a fact I had to kill you. He was walking slowly towards the boy, at a determined pace. What? Why? Why do you want to kill me? Why do you all want me dead? The blonde shouted out as he backed into the wall. He was learning shinobi tricks, yes, but he was still barely 6, and the man in front of him was easily 3 times his size. You killed them. My family, my friends, all gone. Even my daughter. At first, I debating coming after you. I needed to know you weren't just locked away in some child. I wouldn't let myself sink to your level. The unnamed man spat. But you are Kyuubi. No child could heal like that. No human one, Yukai, he snarled. Luckily, I found a counter to your trick. He titled the blade to the side, and presented the odd seals and kanji written on it. Normally used by monks on papers. This ward will burn you alive from the inside out. Just like you burnt them all alive. He snarled and ran at Naruto, stabbing at him. Thump. The boy's heart raced. This man was going to kill him. Thump. He didn't want to die. Thump. The man lunged at him, knife poised to strike. Thump. He was only a child. Even if he wasn't human. Thump. Die, demon. The deranged man cried, eyes bloodshot with hate and anger from so many years focused into this 1 second. A meaty thud of flesh parted by blade. The knife clattered to the ground, falling clean from the boy's side in the mont's falling grasp. Naruto's eyes widened in horror. It was reflex to bring his hand out when threatened. He never realized why. Until now, his hand had dug into the mont's torso, each finger penetrating fully into his chest, a faint haze of red surrounding the limb. Blue eyes looked up into bloodshot ones, the life slowly fading from them as the anger grew still. His mouth moved. "Demon," he spat, one last time. The body collapsed onto the academy student, forcing the clawed hand from the would-be assassin's torso as flesh and bone parted like water under raging yoki. "Why?" Naruto mumbled, looking down at his blood-stained hand. At each fingernail, extended and pointed, thicker than human nails ever grew. Until the haze died away and it returned to normal. He lay there panting slightly for a moment, before pushing the core off of him. The man's entire front was covered in blood. And so was he. He in a seeming daze pulled himself up, and onto a roof. And started back towards home. He arrived without incident. There were a few moments when he sensed someone at the edge of his vision, but they hadn't stopped him. When he arrived, he slipped the deadbolts back in place, shed his cloths and took a shower. He had his own shower. A luxury in this type of housing. He figured it out a year or so ago. If everyone hated him, they wouldn't want him near them either. It was for that reason he was actually better off than most in some regards. He felt he should laugh at the irony, but couldn't. He turned the knob and water poured down on him. It was cold, icy cold, but it washed away the blood. He looked at his hand. The nails had retracted, but still kept their edge. He knew somehow that at any moment they would become hard as iron and sharper than a sword. He idly traced one along the wall. It made an odd sound but didn't cut. His other hand the same. Why was that? Only one had been his weapon. Only one had stolen a life. Stolen a life. Murder. He had killed a man. Worse. He enjoyed it. He started laughing. He could feel it now. Before the shock had set in, but now he could feel it. Every moment of his blow, of killing the one who would kill him, it ran singing trough him. He had struck back as last after all these years. Struck back. Vengeance. Killed his friends. Killed his family. The man had lost it all in Kyuubi's attack. He had called him the Kyuubi. Called him a demon. Was he a demon? He looked at his hand, running the edge of his nails. No claws. Fingernails could not cut though flesh and bone like that. Humans didn't have claws. Demons did. He in his semi-loused walked over to his mirror and looked into it. Looked into his eyes. They were round, not the slits demons were said to bear. But were they? As he peered closer he noticed they seemed oval, not round but not silted. They looked round at first glance, but as you looked closer you could see it. His ears tapered. This morning they were round. They still were, but now they pointed slightly, once again hinting but not proving. His teeth, sharp, canines longer than most, but still human. So far it was odd but acceptable. But there were still marks that damned him. The ones most viable. Each cheek had 3 dark lines. At first, one would dismiss them as scars, but they were the same texture as skin. They didn't indent, they didn't puff out. And he never scared anyway. They could be tattoos except they darkened with age, not lightened. The color was odd, at first, just darker skin, then brownish, finally almost black, hinting at red. And they were bigger than before. He traced them as he had fang and ear. He was becoming something. Demon? Kitsune? Kyuubi? He wasn't like them. He had seen others, the ones with white eyes. The ones who were like dogs, the ones with eyes as crimson as blood. The blood he split. That's where this all came from. He was a killer. He had taken flesh, blood, bone, and life of a man. He was a killer. Above all else, that was stained upon his soul for eternity. Did he have a soul? Did demons have souls? He wasn't human. That much couldn't be denied. But was he a demon? Maybe something in between? Half demon? Hanyu? No, half demons were as such at birth, and didn't change. He was becoming like a demon slowly. Maybe he was a demon in human form? Some could do that, right? Maybe he had done that out of instinct. He felt the pull of what else he had done out of it. He forced himself to steady. Demon instincts are strong. He could have changed into a human out of it. If that was true, could he change back? And if so, back into what? Could he become human-like again? Should he? His eyes were sharper. He could make out every fleck of blue along his eyes as he looked into his mirror. He could hear better too. Scent, touch, even taste. He was stronger like this. They couldn't hurt him as easily like this. They feared him like this. He didn't like their fear, but he needed it. If he was a demon among them, then he had to stop them from hurting him again. But why was he here? Kyuubi. He was born on the day the fox stuck. They had to be connected. Maybe they had shielded him from Kyuubi and that is why it struck. No, that made no sense. If they protected him from Kyuubi, then why not from each other? Why attack their prize? Unless Kyuubi had struck because he was here. But then why not offer him up to the beast rather than invoke its wrath? That didn't make sense unless it would strike either way. That's not how demons worked. They took what they wanted and only what they wanted. Killing stuff for the hell of it was a human thing. Unless of course blood was what said demon was after. Why would Kyuubi want him? Kitsune. Kitsune could shapeshift. It was one of their defining powers. Was he Kitsune? If so, then did the Kyuubi come to rescue him rather than destroy him? This was so confusing. The Hokage was nice to him, but the people hated and feared him. And why would Kahona steal a Kitsune anyway? Why would they hold a kid here? Power. The shinobi nations were at an eternal cold war. They had just ended an active one with Stone, losing a lot of their forces. That was one of the first lessons he had learned from the academy. Maybe he was to be a weapon? A demon was powerful and deadly. A village with one on their side would have a huge edge. He was a demon then, meant to be a weapon of Kahona. But there were problems there too. The Hokage didn't treat him like a weapon, didn't speed his training, or teach him how to tap his powers. And the villagers openly attacked him. Did this mean he was a failure in some way? No, he wasn't the failure. His powers were there, just known. Maybe the project? Maybe the fourth wanted a weapon but the third didn't? The third wanted to give him a chance? Let him live as humans do? Maybe the seal kept him as a human. That could explain things. Most seals were temporary anyway. His must be finally failing. He was retaking his normal form. But what to do then? Should he hate the village for taking him from his people? Or thank them for leaving him among them despite the risk? Men had come to kill him and yet. The image of the Hokage smiling at him, of an old man and his daughter giving him a bowl of noodles from their newly opened shop, of the assistant librarian sneaking him a scroll and showing him how to read it. No, some hated him, but some liked him. He had to be on guard. But he wouldn't abandon them either. Who's to say the demons would take him in anyway? The fourth wanted a weapon? Alright, he'd be a weapon. He looked at his hand, the one he had taken a life with. But not Kahona's. He'd be the weapon of those precious to him. Those that accepted him, so he'd stay. He wasn't human, he wasn't of this village. But he'd stand among them. A fox among the leaves. The academy. It was different. In ways better. The beatings had died down. In others, the stares were still there. No fear. Well, with a few exceptions. They didn't know. While the fact that he had struck back for once, the fact he had taken a life had spread deep into the population of Kahona. Fortunately, the old man had once again disallowed the knowledge to be spread. Of course he didn't know about the first law, but he knew this one. He could use the power now as well. It took no real effort, just let the anger deep inside him flare for a moment. Just one moment. Anbu had shown up each time. The first few times they had almost struck, but had stopped. Most children didn't know, of those that did, few believed. Those that did believe, they feared. And they were right to fear. He had killed. And now that he had taken a life he knew he could do it again. He didn't want to. But he could. The rest mocked him, it pissed him off. He almost wanted to call on his power right in the middle of class, to just let it loose and let them see what they were mocking. He didn't. It wasn't out of any sort of humbleness. Anyone could tell you he wasn't humble. For all the demeaning words they sent him, Naruto still had a good sense of self. He was stronger than all of them, and bragged about it, especially when they threatened him. It was kind of odd how a moment of such terror had brought him such peace, even if it was a bitter one. No, the fact was he was freaking sick of the fear. He was sick of the hate. It reeked. His only option was to gain their respect. And while showing off his power would get them to shut up, it would drive any hope of getting that from them even further away. So he waited. He did the stupid tests, he did the drills, and generally goofed off in class. In the end it didn't matter. Once he got on a dream he'd show them all that he was worth their respect. That he could do more than just destroy. Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka called out. He was snapped out of his thought, and walked down. Alright, test time. I can do this. Iruka was a kind man. At first, he was like the rest. He hated him, he could tell that. But over the years, it had changed. The hate had died away, and something akin to loyalty grew. It had always confused him slightly at how he would use the one jutsu he had yet to learn. He could swap with the best of them, and his transformation was better than anyone else in the class. After all, he was the only one to manage to change his scent as well as form. He also didn't need hand seals. Actually, he never needed them. He used them, of course. He didn't need them, but saw no need to advertise that. No need to show them he was different, not yet. 2 clones Naruto. This is your last chance. He had a grim look to him at that. Last chance. The words echoed through his mind. He nodded. Don't worry, Iruka-sensei, last chance. He couldn't do it, he had tried and tried and tried. The only time he had ever gotten it right was. Iruka frowned. Naruto hadn't even formed the basic chakra focusing seal. 2 clones. Naruto muttered. The world faded from his vision. It would end everything he had built for the last few years. But to pass, his only chance. I'm sorry, sensei. His eyes silted, as the class suddenly halted in its track. Red flickers of visible energy flicked off his skin as his whisker marks darkened, fingernails became claws, and teeth became fangs. He clacked his fingers. He pressed 2 to his forehead, a pair of solid identical clones forming at his sides. Will these do, sensei? His voice was darker, deeper, and bore a growling resonance. The students behind him terrified from the raw predatory aura around him. Of the sheer bloodlust. In front of him, Iruka and Mizuki showed nothing but raw terror. Monster, they mouthed. No. At once his world came back into focus. And the world around him flashed back to reality. He nodded. His eyes gleamed red for a second, remaining slightly silted as 9 clones popped into existence. An ominous sign, but not anything to really suggest he had reverted nature. Still for a moment everyone felt it. Not in the classroom, no, everyone in the village even beyond felt a sudden chill run through them. Shaking off the feeling, Iruka nodded with a smile. You passed, Naruto. The now official shinobi grinned widely. Yeah, I knew I'd make it. He cheered again so loudly, he was certain that everyone in the class now knew he had graduated. Taking the offered forehead protector and tightly securing it to his own brow. He raced out of the room to show his classmates, missing the flicker of discontent along Mizuki's face. Most of the students were open in disbelief the dead last had passed. How hard was this test if even the infamous dropout managed it? The rest of the students made it though, a few failing, most succeeding in their goal. Naruto felt a pang of sorrow for those that had failed, but shook it off knowing that they could always try again next year. After all, this was his own 3rd attempt. He grinned as he disappointed to the rooftops, heading to Ichiraku's at an excited pace. Not full out, of course, there was no need to do so. At once he felt it, chakra approaching at high speed, radiating, killing intent. No, annoyance. A lifetime of hatred had honed his senses for such things to a razor point. He turned and faced Mizuki-sensei? Naruto, he said cheerfully and a little out of breath, boy, you're fast when you want to be. I just remembered that you stay alone. You see, for each graduate there's a sort of final exam. I mean, knowing the basic techniques is handy and all, but we can't really send out anyone that doesn't know how to actually use them in a fight. Everyone else has already reserved a message on their mission, and I figured it'd be best to deliver this one myself. Now remember, treat this as a real mission, Naruto. If you can't complete it, you'll have to repeat the year. Blinking, Naruto nodded before grinning. So I get to prove myself? He nearly jumped for joy. Finally, practical work, something he could actually thrive at. It was shortly after this that Iruka discovered Naruto poring over the scroll of seals with a frown of concentration. Naruto, he barked. Naruto glanced back. Oh, Iruka. Hey, sorry about looking inside, I was just curious. I still passed the practical exam, right? Iruka frowned. Practical exam? Naruto grinned his trademark foxy grin and nodded. Yeah, steal the scroll, faux mission. You know, the one Mizuki gave me? At he lack of recondition and growing dread on his favorite teacher's face, his own smile died away, switching to a confused frown. Iruka's eyes shot open as he heard this. Mizuki sent Naruto to do this? But why? Unless... His train of thought was violently disrupted by an reproaching shuriken. He dodged to the side, getting a graze to his arm for the trouble. That was no ordinary shuriken. The only man I know that uses that kind of projectile is. Standing in a tree nearby was Mizuki wearing a rather snake-like grin to his face. Good work, Naruto. The final part of your mission is to defeat Iruka there. He said it so sarcastically the young blonde immediately knew something was up. Mizuki-sensei, what's going on? He looked between his two teachers still confused, a feeling of dread building in him. Iruka fell into a defensive crouch, one hand swaying to his own weapon pouch. So, you used Naruto as a scapegoat to steal the scroll of forbidden seals. Why? His eyes flickered with anger and betrayal. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. Was that true? Mizuki had always been nice to him. Sure, he never did anything for him like Iruka had, but he always smiled, always acknowledged him. It couldn't be true. Mizuki only laughed. This village is why. Konoha has grown weak, so much so it will even allow a demon in its midst. He glared harshly at Naruto, a wicked grin on his face. Or didn't you know why you are so hated? It wouldn't surprise me. For the lord of all demons, you certainly are an idiot. You're damning yourself, Mizuki. Iruka warned, you know it is forbidden to speak of it. A sneer was his only reply. And why should I care about the laws of this village? I am sick of this village. I was the greatest projectile specialist of my year. And look at what they have done to me. Academy instructor. What a laugh. They take me off the field once I graduate and set me to teach snot-nosed punks how to throw kunai straight. The final insult was him. He pointed to Naruto. But that's all over. With the scroll I'll become stronger than any pathetic leaf nin. Don't you see, Iruka? All this Konoha dose has robbed people of strength. It stole my chance at fame, cut down the Uchiha to a spoiled brat and a psychopath, and even reduced the greatest of all demons to a cheap imitation of its great savior. He looked at Naruto. Haven't you ever wondered about your seal? Why your chakra terrifies everyone so much? You're a demon, Naruto. The same demon that attacked this village 12 years ago. You are the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto was shocked in place. He had always suspected something. He knew he was different, even guessed he might be a demon, but to be the Kyuubi itself? The worst he had ever imagined was its child, and even being related to the beast wasn't a flicker to being the demon itself. The seal. It must have binded him, swollen his memories, bound his power. But why? Why not kill him? The throwing star specialist continued, now come on. You want the power they stole from you, don't you? Everyone hates you here, even Iruka. You killed his parents, you know. He complained worse than I ever did when you first joined the class. Naruto stepped back as if physically struck, looking to Iruka for confirmation. A bowed head was his only answer. No. Naruto started shaking his head. This wasn't true. It couldn't be true. Seeing his pawn freeze up, the silver-haired traitor frowned. If the kid wouldn't side with him, then he was useless. Fine. If all you can do now is hide, then be a good fox and die. With that he drew forth and released one oversized throwing stars at a direct path for Naruto's face. Naruto's eyes flared up at it and a flicker of yoki flared over him, before images of the man flashed again. The shuriken becoming a kitchen knife. Mizuki, that desperate madman, no. He screamed as he did what he had threatened to the entire encounter and froze up completely. Eyes shutting tight, he wouldn't kill again. He couldn't kill again. He wouldn't become a monster. Thump, splash, warmth. Drips of warm liquid, already hardening, fell onto his face, a terrible sticky slickness and scent of copper. It was blood. He knew it all too well, but no pain? His eyes opened and he saw Iruka crouched over him. The throwing blade embedded in his back. His Chunin flak vest the only thing saving his life. His eyes widened further. Why? He asked, barely a whisper. Iruka smiled warmly, though his eyes flickered with pain. The wound was debilitating. He didn't know how damaging it was. All he knew was Iruka was suffering, and it was his fault again. More blood, not his own, shed to preserve his life. One that had proven far from valuable to his mind, because you are Naruto, genin of the leaf. First and foremost. And even more importantly, you are my friend. No matter where you come from. Iruka-sensei. Naruto's eyes welled, he did care. Even if he was a demon, someone still cared. His thoughts broken by a harsh laugh. Isn't that rich? He sacrifices himself to save his parents' murderer. Well, it looks like you managed to wipe out the entire family, Kyuubi. He laughed again. And the funniest thing is, it's pointless. You're useless, as weak as us mortals now. No, not even. You can't even fight like a human. You're nothing but a sack of flesh waiting to be cut down. I could kill you with one well-placed punch. How the mighty have fallen." He stopped suddenly. "To think I used to admire you." His sneer was there for only a moment before it faded. Something wasn't right. A flicker. The world dimmed. The wind halted. Then everything seemed to explode. Naruto. No, what was standing there was not Naruto, not entirely. It wasn't even human. Red slitted eyes burned with unnatural hate. Raw killing intent so malevolent Mizuki found he couldn't move, couldn't even breath. His heart seemed torn between stopping out of terror or bursting out of panic, and though it all mind-numbing pain seized through him as he realized that his arm had just been ripped down its length by a set of claws harder than even chakra-reinforced steel, leavening naught but gory taters hanging lamely from a stump. Severed bones actually falling out of the bloody mess. He didn't even see the kid move. He opened his mouth to scream. He didn't get the chance. Fire exploded into his leg as Naruto's other clawed hand tore into his thigh, faster than even an experienced eye could track. The raw power of the blow tearing the Chunin missing nin from his roost and sending him swinging. The kinetic force from the blow dragged the yoki-shrouded arm through his leg as if it was wet tissue paper. The demonic energy infecting and obliterating his chakra paths on contact. Mizuki had never felt such pain, such agony. It was as if his soul itself was being burned out of him, blood flowing out of the tattered arm as he was sung around a half-arch before the inevitable happened. The red-clouded beast's claw finally passed through the now ruined limb, tearing out of his foot and leavening charred shredded remains. Mizuki would bleed out of such wounds. He wasn't that lucky. The helpless traitor was set flying. Mizuki's terror-ravaged mind barely managed to process the fact that he was getting away from this horrible monster when something filled him with even greater dread. He was caught. 8 neat little claw tips stabbing out of his shoulders, the thumbs too short to pierce though entirely. The flesh already blackening as the destructive energy went to work. Each claw had impaled effortlessly through his shoulders, wenching the bones out of their joints. As they were finally caught in his palm, he looked up and into the hate-filled eyes of his tormentor. Demonic eyes, fangs bared, the faint slits converted to tattoo-like markings and ears tapering to blade-like points. A demon. He could feel his body burning, being ripped apart on a cellular level from merely being this close to the humanoid fiend. The unending killing intent destroying his mind as nerve cells literally imploded under the endless strain until all he could comprehend was pain and terror. The last remaining sentient thought being that the hell he was going to would be such a wonderful mercy. Naruto roared. It was inhuman, bestial, demonic, verbalizing the rage still clouding over his mind. This traitor who would dare hurt his precious person. He would try to kill him? He would suffer before he died. One clawed hand ripped its way out of his shoulder and with a painfully slow exertion of strength, began squeezing. Nails biting into flesh, aura cooking away tissue. Mizuki managed one last pain-filled scream before his skull gave way and blood-gray matter and bone fragments exploded outwards, hitting the ground sizzling. His destructive aura reducing the body to a withered husk. Mind clearing slightly, he turned back to Iruka. The man staring at him with a look of abstract horror. No one hurt my friends. No one. He growled out, before his features slowly reverted to their normal nature and he passed out. Iruka sat there mute. A friend dead after betrayal, a brother asleep after awakening to his darkest nature, and himself, stunned to silence. Nothing would ever be the same. Kyuubi. I am the Kyuubi. I am the ender of lives. I am the terror of millions. I am the harbinger of destruction. I am the demon fox. The Kyuubi no Kitsune. These were the thoughts of Naruto Uzumaki as he sat near catatonic in a hospital bed. No nurse would dare harm him this time. No medic nin would accidentally inject him with something poisonous. No nun would even get within 5 feet of him. To do so would risk looking into his eyes. His cerulean blue silted eyes. The claws were still there as well. Not so much, just slight points to a fingernail. But hardened and sharp. His marks had darkened as well. Teeth more pointed. Countless little things littered across his body signifying the awakening of a darker heritage. He hadn't noticed. There was blood on his hands. That he noticed. He raised it to his eye level. It was dark now. Crusty, every so faintly elastic. It would bend in the thicker parts, though the thinner was already flaking off. He had seen so much blood, tasted so much. Normally his own. This was different. It was thinner than his, smelt different. Smelt good. That is what terrified him. A door shut. Eyes snapped open wide and looked upwards. Sarutobi. The old man himself. Hokage. Had he come to finish the job of his predecessor? Had he come to help? What was this stinging in his eyes? Why was his vision so blurred? Why? Why him? Why was he a monster? Naruto. The voice, sympathetic. Sorrowful. So much pain. He had caused it. Wet. Falling along his cheeks, sliding down along the marks on his face. Tears? Impossible. He never cried. Demons couldn't cry. Naruto. It's okay. The voice again, he snapped to awareness. Looking up at the old monkey before him. Why? He asked. Was that his voice? It was so small, even smaller than before. The old man sighed and reached out, brushing away his tears. You weren't supposed to know, Naruto. The Yondaime. He seemed a loss for words for a moment. The question came, he knew what he needed to ask. What was bothering him so? Why? Do you keep calling me that? He needed to know, one way or another he needed it. A slight wind picked up, Yoki spiking with emotion. Naruto didn't notice. Others did. Anbu readied their weapons to strike, terrified. The old man made a gesture, ordering them to back down. What do you mean, Naruto? Naruto. Why do you call me that? It's a human name. I'm not human. I don't have a name. Came stoic reply, almost mechanical. Sarutobi shook his head. Naruto is your name. It was given to you when you took this form. What you were, is in the past. He said it with distinction. There was a realness there. The old man believed it. He was wrong. He had to be. Naruto shook his head. No. Look at me. I'm a monster, old man. I ripped him to pieces. I really tore him to pieces. Look at my hands, old man, look at them. He held them out, and again the Anbu took stance. Taking a deep breath, the third put his hands over the young reincarnate. What I see are two hands that defended a friend. I see the blood of a traitor. One who earned his end. There was silence. I enjoyed it. Hate me. You need to see what I am. Need to stop me now, old man. If I can do it once. That is natural. Naruto. You are a demon. That is true. There is no point denying it. A sickly relief warmed though him at that. Like the end to the stress of running from some crime. It was over. Terrible, but finally over. But, what but? That was it, wasn't it? That is not all you are. You are a citizen of this village, Naruto. You are a person friend to many who live in these walls. And in every way that matters you are human. You are Uzumaki, Naruto. The Kyuubi was a mindless beast, bloodthirsty and uncontrolled. Naruto is a person who values the lives of others. Someone who can control themselves, and can use whatever darkness is inside him to help protect what is bright. A glimmer of hope. Really? It was weak. But could the old man mean it? Could he be a person and not a beast? The old man smiled. Yes. I have seen both Kyuubi and Naruto. There are some traits in similarity, but they are as different as night and day. There was a blur, and in a motion the Anbu were ready to strike, barely stopping in time as the Hokage signaled them to stop, before resting his hands around the blonde form now hugging him. It's okay, Naruto, it's okay. A name. He was Naruto Uzumaki. He was once the Kyuubi no Kitsune, but no longer. It wasn't much. Just a name. 2 pieces of kanji, but it was enough. The next day, a forehead protector graced his brow, and a smile his lips. He was a genin, a shinobi, a person. No more than that, he was a protector. The changes had stuck. He had shifted, started a dark evolution to awakening the inhuman blood within him. It didn't matter. The old man had explained everything, his nature, the seal, the changes he could expect over time as the steel gradually weakened, letting more of his past incarnation join his current one, how he could access more yoki in extreme circumstances. Even the Yondaime's desperate plan and intent. Everything. That last one was a real blow to the head. He was supposed to be the judge of Konoha? His jury and executioner if he so chose? Well, he couldn't help but let though that butchering a few of them would be very satisfying. No, that was Kyuubi's way, not Naruto. Naruto protected what was precious to him, who was precious to him. The rest of the villagers could go jump of the Hokage's tower for all he cared. Actually, that would be kinda fun to watch. No bad, Naruto. Keep away from the dark side. Anyway, they didn't matter. If they attacked, well, he could defend himself. If that meant hurting them to stop them, then he would. If it meant kill or be killed. A shudder. He didn't want to kill again. But if he died, then odds are his old self wouldn't really give a fuck what his current one would want or not. Dying was not an option. Ever. Right then, off to the academy. It was time to join his team. Maybe make a few new friends? Iruka and the old man knew what he was and still accepted him. He was pretty sure the ramen stand owner knew as well. And he still laughed at his jokes, and give him the occasional discount on his favorite meal. If he could make friends so much older than him, or younger depending on how you look at it, then making a few his own age should be easy. Sure, he had tried before, and not done so well, but that was before he knew what was in the way. He could deal with this. He was Uzumaki Naruto, and nothing could stop him. A shudder, right, no more claiming to be unbeatable or the like. Not going down that path. He entered the room with a grin. It was false, but hinting at a small glimmer of hope inside. Ah, there was Shikamaru, always sitting at the closest desk to the door. Maybe finding a place that required more than 5 steps to reach was too troublesome? He flashed his foxy grin. The lazy would-be nin squinted. Naruto? You look different. What are you imitating, Kiba or something? He asked in his normal sleepy drawl. The blonde scowled. Like hell, I would want to look like dog breath. It's just something that happened. I don't know, maybe it's a clan thing or something. Somewhat true, he was fairly sure most kitsune had traits not unlike his own in human form. Though much more defined, but that would come in time. Let's just hope no one puts 2 and 2 together before then, shall we? Whatever, came the predictable reply. Good old lazy Shikamaru. He found his normal seat and looked out at the class. It was exciting. They were here to become real ninja. True shinobi of the leaf. Not that he really cared about most of the leaf. But it was that few that mattered, and he would soon be accounted among their ranks. He felt himself growing tired. It had been a long night. Altogether he had only managed 2 hours. Less actually. Any time he managed to get to sleep he was plagued by nightmares of the past. Horrors of both incarnations ripping what rest came to him apart like paper. Uzumaki Naruto. Came a voice he at once snapped to attention. Haruno Sakura. He grinned. Sakura was on his team. Finally, some quality time with the girl he was destined to be with. Uchiha Sasuke. Thump. Naruto's face hit the desk like a hammer, a muffled groan coming forth. And the day was going so well. The other teams listed off and he looked back up at his teammates. Sakura was as expected, fawning over her crush, while said bastard was scowling. As if he was too good for them. The blonde sent a scowl right back, unknown to him, his eyes flashing red. Sasuke's eyes actually widened at that. What the hell was up with the Dobi? No loud reactions? His looks were all odd and he could have sworn that his eyes had become red for a moment there. Not the Sharingan. It might have been years since he had seen one, but he'd never forget his own family dojutsu. Still, it was worth looking into. If the dope had to be on his team, he might as well minimize the hassle of having him around. Sakura blinked. Why was Sasuke looking at Naruto? He should be paying attention to her, not the dead last. I mean, sure, he was on their team, but so was she, and she'd be so much more useful than the blonde annoyance. Come to think of it, why hadn't he asked her out yet? The little ball of energy did every day without fail. He hadn't even reacted to when they were put on the same team. She looked over and her eyes widened. What the hell? He looked different. His marks were thicker. Maybe he painted them on or something. And his eyes. There was something wrong about them. Not just their shape, that had changed, but also their color. They were darker. And there was something about them, some consuming shadow. It was like looking into the eyes of a wolf or tiger. The eyes of a predator. The eyes of a killer. She shook her head. Naruto? A killer? Yeah, right. Still, he did just become a ninja, and killing was part of the job description. How the hell did he pass in the first place? Hell, he was falling asleep right now. Naruto remained blissfully unaware of becoming the new center of attention to his teammates. Strain from last night finally taking its due and stealing his awareness before he realized what was going on. Seconds turned to minutes, turned to hours. The sensei of the other teams came and left with their new students, and still Team 7 waited. Well, waited and snored. Kakashi walked in and blinked. 2 glaring children and a sleeping demon. Lovely. My first impression. I don't like you. The glares intensified and he grinned. Wake him up and meet me on the roof. A poof and he was gone. Sasuke twitched and got up heading for the stairs. He was in a team of idiots and losers, great. He was sure to kill Itachi at this rate. Sakura, seeing her crush leave, called out, "Wait." He said to bring Naruto along. She didn't really like the blonde, but still, Sensei had told them to wake up Naruto, so they should wake up Naruto. If he's dumb enough to fall asleep, then he'll just slow us down. Came the comment. US. He said US as in a we. Inner Sakura roared in triumph, "Take that, pig." Still, Sensei could become upset if they disobeyed him. Looking over at the sleeping blonde, she kicked him in the side. "Wake up, Baka." Blue eyes rimmed in red flashed open, faint slits narrowing for a moment before dilating back to normal. What was that for? He got up, rubbing his side. Sensei showed up. "We're supposed to meet up on the roof." She barked down at him before running off after her crush. Sasuke would forgive her for this, right? Naruto blinked, rubbed his side again, the ache already fading as he followed after her. When he arrived, he noticed the silver-haired man. His appearance, aside from screaming, "Ninja," didn't really say much. He had only one eye exposed. Interesting. The scar, what little he could see of it hinted that an empty socket was likely what lay under the lopsided headband. He was on the skinny side, but that could just as easily be from the fact that the man was tall. I mean, like freakishly tall. Not inhuman, but still he had to be the tallest man he had ever met. The hair didn't help at all. Blinking the sleep out of his eyes, he went over and sat by his teammates, in a small semicircle that was disturbingly reminiscent to a love-in. The figure eye smiled. "Well now that we're all here, let's get introduced to one another. My name is Hayate Kakashi. I'm a jonin. I have a few hobbies. My likes are not really for younger audiences to know about. My dislikes are my own business. As are my dreams for the future." "Your turn, Pinky." Sakura paused, not having the time to fully comprehend what was asked of her. "I'm Haruno Sakura. Genin, I guess. My hobbies." She glanced over as Sasuke, "are my own business. I dislike Ino, pig, and sleepy bakas." She shot a glare at Naruto with that one. "And my dreams of the future." She glanced back at Sasuke, blushing. Creepy, though, Kakashi, as Sasuke's subtlety edged away from his now open stalker. "Okay, gloomy next. I'm Sasuke Uchiha. Since no one else is actually telling anyone anything, I won't bother with the pretense. Frankly, I think I'd be better off on my own." He scowled. Kakashi frowned at that. "Great. This is turning out just great." "Sleepy?" he asked, looking over at Naruto. The blonde yawned. "Name's Naruto. I liked Sakura, I guess. I dislike those who attack me without reason." His eyes tinged red again at that. "My ambition is to see those I care for safe." Kakashi blinked. At that. "Okay then. Well, tomorrow we're having a little lesson on survival. We'll meet up at Training Ground 32 at 8 o'clock. I suggest you don't eat breakfast. If you do, you'll throw up." With that and a stereotypical ninja poof of smoke, he disappeared. "Great," the blonde muttered. "Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm going home. Finally sleep." The next day. Tap tap tap. A eye twitched. Tap tap tap. A brow clenched. Tap tap tap. A fist tightened. Tap tap taw. Thump. "Would you cut that out?" roared Sakura at their blonde compatriot. "Sakura," Naruto whined. "Come on. What else am I going to do?" He had ceased taping his foot and now had entered full pouting face mode. "I mean, Bakashi said he'd be here 2 hours ago." The whining deepened. "Arguing isn't going to solve anything," Sasuke interjected. Sakura was about to agree when, with a poof of ninja smoke, Kakashi appeared. "Yo." I smiled. "Sorry I'm so late. I got lost on the road of life." This was the straw that broke the camel's back. Leer. Came two roars alongside a kunai. Kakashi's sweat dropped as he caught the lethal throwing implement, arms slightly jerked back from the force of the small projectile. Sorry," he stated. "Well, I guess now would be a good time to tell you what's really going on." His eye took an evil glint to it. The students collectively gulped, though they did their best to hide it. "This is the real Genin exam." He grinned. "What you did in class was just the qualifier." The Genin were collectively stunned. Qualifier? That was BS. They worked so hard. Well, Naruto did. Sasuke was a sure thing, and Sakura had put all the effort of going for a light jog into it. No, this simply pissed them off. Kakashi smirked. At first he had felt it may have been a mistake waiting until today to tell them, letting them start to feel pride, but it was oddly rewarding to feel their minuscule killing intent. That was until another brand hit him like out-of-control semi-doing 80. Struggling to actually draw breath, he looked up and into red-flecked blue eyes. This intent, it was inhuman. Every part of him was screaming to run. It was as bad as when he had looked into the red eyes of the beast in all its glory. No worse. Then it was simply enough to melt the minds of every inexperienced shinobi in the city. This time it was entirely focused on him, and he found to his ever-growing terror he wasn't even able to force himself to breath. It was gone a moment later, and he took a breath, noting that both Sakura and Sasuke were equally pale, drawing breaths and backing away from the blonde swiftly. It was a good thing it hadn't been directed at them. He had little doubt they would have literally died of shock. So he can use at least some of his old power. This complicates things. Yamato should have been chosen. He at least could have suppressed or rather withstood the power the sealed demon was likely to throw around. A weak smile, well, I suppose that I should explain, right? Sasuke nodded swiftly, composing himself. What was that? He had always felt glimmers of fear of the blonde for some reason, but that just there was unreal. The closest thing to it was Itachi, a growl more than anything. Well, if he could learn to handle that, then he'd be one step closer. If anything, he may have finally found a worthy rival. Sakura was simply freaked out. This is what they meant. Her parents had always told her to stay away from Naruto, that he was dangerous. Yeah, he gave off creepy vibes now and then, but it wasn't anything major, not until right then. What is he? She kept her distance. Naruto himself was scolding himself for tugging on Yoki like that. Way to freak out your teammates. Well, I guess they'd find out sooner or later about it. I mean, I'd have to use it at some point, and it's not like it's not noticeable. Kakashi's sweat dropped again. Right. Well, this exam has a 33% success rate. The test is to ensure that you can survive in the real world. He explained seriously, gaining the attention of his students. Grades are great and all, but what works on paper and what works in the field are rarely the same thing. The concealed aggression Naruto was still letting leak through slowly died away at the speech. Well, that made sense, he supposed. Right then. What's the test? The masked nin grinned wider. Well, at least he was somewhat reasonable. Things might not be as bad as he feared, still. He was going to have to put a lot more into this than he suspected. A basic qualifier as stated. Your goal is to get one of these. He held up 2 bells. From me, as you can see. At least one of you is going to head back to the academy. His eye narrowed seriously. Sakura looked slightly panicked at that. Earlier on she would have figured herself and Sasuke could easily pass, but now. What works on paper rarely works on the field. Rang though her head. She wasn't the worst at practicals. But her grade was almost entirely at its spot because of test scores. And Naruto. He had shown that insane killing intent. Between him and Sasuke she had no chance at all of getting the bells. Unless, that could work. I team up with Sasuke and get a bell with him before Naruto has a chance. A small devious smirk came across her face. Well, take that prize right under the monster's nose. Sasuke himself was contemplative. This was a great chance to test himself. A chance to go far, to show what he was capable of. Defeat a Jonin? Even he wasn't that arrogant, not yet. Someday, soon if he had a say in it, but not yet. Stealing something from one, however, was another matter. It'd be hard, but not outside of his limits. Kakashi smirked, but kept his posture open, ready to defend or attack at a moment's notice. Right. You have until noon. He held out a small timer, turned the dial and planted it with one smooth movement, putting the bells to his belt in its stead. Go. In a flash Sasuke was in the trees looking for cover, Sakura hot on his heels. Naruto remained standing. Kakashi was more than slightly nervous, and swiftly sped up his chakra flow. A trick he had found both increased his speed, strength, and resistance to genjutsu at the price of cutting deeply into his stamina. In this state he'd only last 1/5 his normal limit, but it was his only shot at resisting that killer intent. It had worked in his last match with the fox, to an extent. Naruto narrowed his eyes. He's serious, really serious. Still, something's not right. It's a trick, he said aloud. You're trying to separate us. The 2 bells, the garmented fail. Even provoking me at the start, I bet. He was wrong, but it had indeed proven a fortunate misstep on his part, so why not let him think that? Very clever, but why? Kakashi asked. wondering how much he had figured out. Sasuke and Sakura were at a distance. It was unlikely they could hear them. Naruto frowned. I haven't figured that part out yet. But I do know something. He smirked slightly. Kakashi frowned. What is that? I'm sick of holding back out of fear, came the response. Ever since I was a small child, before I even knew fully what I am, I was afraid of people. They always feared me, hated me. I tried to blend in, act like I was one of them. But the truth is, the flickers started to spread, as his killing intent washed over the area, unfocused, hazy almost, but prescient, and choking the life out of the area around him. The grass at his feet, wilting, then actually breaking away to dust. Kakashi clenched. This was worse than he had suspected. Was he going to go on another rampage? I'm not, continued the blonde. I walk among you. Unwelcome, a hated blight on the village. And to be honest, much of the reason I don't just go nuts and slaughter everyone is simply not to prove them right. To prove I can be more than what I am destined to. This much bitterness, it was a new side. I was so afraid. I wanted to be Naruto, and not Kyuubi. This brought forth even more worry. But I had to accept that. I had to go beyond it. Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is what I will become. He locked eyes with the silver-haired man. And the first step to becoming that is to become a ninja of this village that hates me so. He smirked. So, get the bells, huh? Kakashi had a split second to dodge as a red aura-infused claw ripped a chunk out of the earth he was just standing on. Red eyes tracking his movement, even as the other slashed towards him at speeds no genin should be able to move at. Splinters exploded across the clearing as Yoki-infused claws obliterated the substitution the Jonin had used. A red comet shooting off in towards the foliage after the retreating Jonin. Shit, this was the main thought of Kakashi. Naruto was a lot more dangerous than he had suspected, and that was saying something. No time to lift his eye patch, barely time for seals. He grabbed and threw a set of kunai at Naruto in an attempt to slow him down. This failed. Deflecting the blades with a swipe of his arm, the now half-melted weapons clattered to the ground as the sealed demon dug his claws into the ground, charging ahead on all fours. Kakashi dodged to the side, wincing as the shroud of Yoki grazed his arm, burning in a way unlike Kaiden Jutsu. He jumped back, barely avoiding the revered claw swipe trails of chakra still carving neat little scratches along his chest. He's speeding up, he noted with growing horror. This was like fighting Guy, no worse. It was like fighting some demonic Hyuga guy. Even one touch would cause damage. Kunai shot out from his side and he changed to a log in a swift replacement, barely missing his swap, once again being reduced to splinters. Come on, sensei. You can do better than this. Naruto all but roared, eyes wild. Kakashi himself was breathing hard. Damn. That was a lot closer than I expected. I may have made a bad call on this one. He looked down at the energy-infused figure. Of all the times for him to finally snap, it had to me on my watch. Sasuke struck hard and fast. Having seen Kakashi's replacement the moment Sakura's kunai and Naruto's fist had struck, he honestly was surprised she had it in her to fulfill her part in this. But the opening was made, and they had to move fast before the dobi struck again. The dobi. He doubted he'd ever call him that again. In class he had always been weird, true, but right now he had never seen anything fight like he had. The aggression and malice. Even worse, he acted like he was playing with their Jonin sensei. No, dead last in class or not, this was no dobi. This was a sleeping beast that had just woken up, and it was pissed. Kakashi's eyes widened as Sasuke charged kunai in hand. You fool! Naruto would be on them in moments, their position now evident. Moments later the tree they were standing on exploded, sending Sasuke flying and pinning Kakashi to the trunk with force. So, get the bells, huh, sensei? The words were said with disdain. Naruto simply reached out and snatched them. He held them out. I pass then, I guess? He then tossed them over to Sasuke, who was just picking himself up. Or not. His eyes narrowed. Well? Is this what you wanted, sensei? Is it? A clawed hand smashed through the wood to the left of the silver-haired man. That's enough, Naruto, came the aged voice of the one person in the village that could end this. Naruto froze, and turned his head slowly, a red slit eye locking with the Hokage, the old man. He seemed tired, angry, and sad? Why was he sad? Naruto let the shroud drop, allowing the now harshly breathing Jonin to slide down into a sitting position. Sarutobi frowned. It seems I was mistaken, letting you take this exam as you were. Naruto's eyes shot open. What? Why? Look around you, Naruto. You've nearly killed your sensei, your teammates are terrified of you. And half of Konoha's elite have shown up ready for the second coming of Kyuubi. The old man waved his hand dramatically, and proved a point. The trees were littered with grim-faced Jonin, the expressionless masks of Anbu. Naruto looked around him, blinking, eyes wide. But I attacked as viscously as you did last night. The third continued. He shook his head. It's only the fact that you did in fact control yourself sufficiently not to launch any death blows that I am speaking to you now. What he would have been doing otherwise was obvious. The blonde shrunk, head drooping. I wanted to make them stop. He said. They never stop. I'm sick of it. They treat me like a monster. What's so wrong with showing them what a real monster is? He looked up in rage, and for a moment his eyes flickered red. That is the wrong part, Naruto. If you let yourself become a monster, you only prove them right. The old man stated. I know you're stronger than that. The blonde held his head defiantly, but there was a waver to him before he simply gave out and fell to his knees. I just want them to stop, old man. Any of it to stop. I know, Naruto. The Sandaime approached, much to the tensing of others, and picked up the silently crying boy. You need to be strong, Naruto. If you want them to stop, then you have to be strong enough to prove them wrong. The meeting with the Hokage was rather reminiscent to his more recent ones, with the add-on of a lecture. Naruto, I understand that you have been going through a hard time. The old man began, but it really is no excuse to have attacked like that. Whether with intent or not, you've left one of our Jonin with more than one new scar for his collection. Scars from wounds that our best medic nins are having considerable problems treating. He berated. Naruto shrunk under the voice. The old man was one of the few he really respected, and to hear him so angry, so disappointed in him. The old man sighed. This is mostly my fault. Right now you are going through what most psychologists term the stages of grief. First, depression, disbelief, bargaining, and you rather clearly demonstrated rage. All you can really do at this point is go through the final stage. Acceptance. Naruto blinked. Accept what, old man? He frowned. That I'm a monster. That I butchered most of this village just over 10 years ago. He was starting to get angry at this point. Yes, came the clear response. That you were a monster. That monster did almost destroy this village on that night 12 years ago. And that you've been given a second chance. He said finally. Naruto blinked. That had been emotional. It reminded him rather drastically of the night with the Forbidden Scroll. What do you mean, old man? You were the Kyuubi no Kitsune. In many ways you still are. You are, for all intent and purpose, its reincarnation. This, however, also means that its crimes are only your own if you repeat them. He continued. You are Yukai, you are Kitsune. This much is true, and will always remain as such. But who you are is still up to you. You can be Naruto Uzumaki if you want to be. Or at this point, you could become a wild beast, a demon lord. I will be honest, I cannot stop you, Naruto. You've already reached the point where the only way I could would be to kill you, and all that would do is restore the beast you once were. He smirked. I figured I could give myself a good accounting, and perhaps last a minute against that Kitsune. Naruto didn't know what to say really at that point. Am I really that strong? He knew he was dangerous. He was winning against Kakashi, and had utterly destroyed Mizuki. But to fight against the Hokage? To actually be able to fight on that level of combat, it was mind-blowing. If you want, I can place you on a team. Technically you passed Kakashi's test, and if he is unwilling, I can likely find another instructor for you. Or you could become a simple civilian with all your considerable ability. As I've said, you could simply run loose, and strike out into the world. There are not many who could slow you down, much less stop you. There was no hesitation. Put me on the team. Naruto replied. I owe you a lot, old man. I can't really make it up to you as a civilian, much less if I'm not even here. Nah, I made up my mind a long time ago, old man. I'm going to be a shinobi of the leaf. He grinned. So what if I'm a demon? You don't care. I don't think Iruka cares. That's enough for me. Besides, you know I never give up, old man. He blinked suddenly, coming to another realization. Crap. I guess I'll have to explain to Sakura and the Teme. He scratched the back of his head. Sarutobi rose an eye at that. Is that so? You realize you do not necessarily have to tell them anything. You could easily start again with a new team. He responded, this early the arrangements were actually rather easy to do. Naruto shook his head. It's not like I'm going to be telling them everything. Just let them know exactly what I am. The way I figure it, odds are they might guess it on their own, and even if they don't, it's not like I wouldn't need to explain what I am at some point or another. I mean, I have a fear-inducing aura, heal way too fast, and that's not even getting into the shroud. I mean, clan techniques only go so far, right? He explained away. The old man frowned, but nodded, true enough. Still, he seemed to be considering something or other. Very well. He walked over to his desk and pressed down on the call button. Send for Team 7. Explanations were never really Naruto's strong suit, so he was understandably nervous at the situation. However, it had to be done. After everything he had gone though, after breaking like that, he had to step forward. If he didn't, he would be stuck in self-doubt for the rest of his life. That wasn't something he was willing to do. He looked at the group. Sakura was nervous. Sasuke dispassionate as always, though hints of annoyance and curiosity were there to those who knew him. And as such they passed unnoticed. Kakashi caused him to wince, his chest was wound up tight, and other bandages showed hints of what could have been crippling injuries if not for the Mon's skill. Right, I guess you want to know what's going on. Well, you know part of it at least, right, sensei? He flinched slightly at that, like he had any right to. No, enough of that. Right, I'll state this plainly. I'm not like you guys. No duh Dobi, came the ever-sarcastic reply of Sasuke. This eased Sakura's fears slightly. If Sasuke was confident there was nothing to fear, right? Naruto smiled weakly. Right, well, I guess I'll do my best to explain. You see, my heritage. A glance at the Hokage confirmed this was the right word. Has recently, well, awakened for a lack of better word. I got kinda messed up because of it. It doesn't help that my yoki seems to make my emotions more intense. Sakura peeped up first. He should have expected it. Sakura had the best grades in class on book knowledge after all. Yoki? Wait, yoki is demon energy. Why would you have demon energy? Sasuke frowned again. That's what that red stuff was. Yoki? Naruto nodded. Yeah, you see, it has to do with that heritage I was talking about. Turns out I'm a Yukai. He shrugged in a classic, who'd have thunk it. Thump. Gah. The blonde swiftly darted over to the now passed out Pinkett. Sakura, are you okay? A blink and green eyes greeted the world once more. Sasuke? She asked as her vision cleared before she screamed at the sight of slitted blue eyes backing up like a crab on caffeine. Chill out, Haruno, came the Uchiha's reply. He told us he was a demon, not that he was out for our blood. Human villages have had demonic protectors before, or didn't you remember Iruka's lessons? A Yukai? Well, that explained a lot. Did his ego a bit of good as well? Of course he feared the blonde. Yukai inspired fear in any human that saw them in battle to some degree. No matter the power of the demon or skill of the human. It was a simple survival instinct. Like any other one, it could be suppressed, and the fact that he had unknowingly done so enough to function around Naruto while he was in full battle mode said a great deal for him. It was said even the Shoden flinched the first time he encountered an inhuman opponent, and he had power over demons. Indeed, the Sandaime replied with a smile. Well, at least one of them seemed able to work with Naruto. That was good. Konoha itself has more than one Yukai amongst us in the past. It is owing to this and their occasional blessings that we are so rich and powerful clans today. Naruto is still getting used to the nature and potential of his demonic abilities, which, as you can imagine, are considerably more difficult to control than our own. Naruto scowled at that. It's not that hard, old man. Sakura had calmed down slightly. So, what now? I mean, we got the bells, but Kakashi-sensei said that wasn't enough. Naruto scowled. That's one thing I'm going to deal with right now. If any of you have a problem working with me, that's fine. Old man said there was other spots for me if I couldn't work with you. Sasuke lunged at the opportunity. Kakashi was legendary. He had read up on the man after watching the fight, but Naruto was what he was always on the lookout for. A worthy sparring partner. No, a superior sparring partner. If he was going to fight Itachi, he'd have to fight on a level that most humans were completely unable to reach. Logically, the only way to reach that level was to be used to fighting on a level then beyond human. I'll stay. It'd be no use sticking the Dobie with a group that would freeze up the moment he enters combat. Kakashi winced slightly at his own injuries. I'll be frank, I don't like you, he said to the blonde. But if need be I can work with you. Naruto. Well, first impressions aside, the being in front of him was what his sensei had died fighting. The Yondaime had wanted the boy treated anew, but there would always be that level of disdain. Sakura looked at Sasuke pleadingly. She couldn't understand why he'd want to stick around that beast. Naruto had gone completely out of control back there. Hell, Kakashi had barely kept up and he was a jonin. What if next time he went after them? Sure, Naruto wasn't seemingly at fault, but that didn't change the fact he was dangerous. Exceedingly so. Was Sasuke really worth that danger? Cha! Roared her inner voice, being a kunoichi is dangerous anyway. Sasuke knows what he's doing. Mind made up. Sakura nodded. I can work. But is there any way to, help keep him from freaking out again? Naruto frowned. Don't worry, Sakura, I'm not going to let that happen again. She glanced over with sheer distrust, but after a glance at Sasuke, nodded, okay. The Hokage frowned. Kakashi wasn't happy with this, and Sakura was obviously still afraid of the blonde. Well, he was planning on doing this anyway. Very well. With one small change, Team 7 will remain intact. He shot a glance at Kakashi, who wisely kept silent. This team will be slightly unconventional in more ways than one. I will be assigning a second jonin to act as, well, your handler Naruto. Sarutobi continued. Handler, came the indigent reply. What's the big idea, old man? A look silenced him. The old man sighed. Naruto, I was going to do this regardless. I do not doubt your loyalty, but I cannot risk you losing control. It so happens that one of my direct subordinates happens to have the rare ability to purify yoki. He will be tagging along in case you lose yourself. Sakura was visibly relieved at hearing this, as was Kakashi to a lesser extent. A man with shortish black hair and an odd helm emblazoned with the hidden leaf symbol of their village shortly stepped out. He looked normal enough, about early to mid-20s with the stress lines of a person twice his age. It was his eyes, however, that were unnerving. A dark, almost black brown that held a sort of emptiness. This was a person who had stared into the abyss for a bit too long. Long enough for it to not only have seen him back, but to know him well enough to memorize him on sight. Kakashi recognized him as one of the main, nameless, Anbu. A man her personally knew as Tenzo. An orphan class shinobi, trained since he could walk to be among the best of the best. A dark legacy from more bloody times. He was also the only known living Mokuton user. In his time as Anbu, he had worked with the wood-wielding warrior, say that 12 times fast I dare you. A considerable number of times. He had in fact provoked his hobby of gardening. He will be using the name Yamato while working alongside you. The Hokage explained. Using? Naruto asked, not really getting it. Sasuke scoffed, powerhouse or no, the Dobie was still a Dobie. Most Anbu give up their names. It's supposedly to both protect themselves and their relations. It's also why they were the masks. When you get to that rank you make a lot of enemies. More than a few Uchiha had made their way up to that rank, so he was rather familiar with the policies of Yamato is a fake name that he'll be using while working with us. Oi, snapped the blonde. I didn't ask for a lecture. I just wanted to know what he meant by using a name. The dark-haired nin merely rolled his eyes. This team will operate slightly differently than a conventional genin squad. Yamato added in at once. Normal squads begin with basic D-rank missions to build up teamwork and train the basics. However, in this case, doing so would be a simple waste of resources. Sakura felt a small twitch in her stomach at that. She didn't like the sounds of this. She had been hit with so many things one after another. Team 7 has at the moment, the top rookie of the year, and the greatest academic student since the likes of the Sannin, alongside 2 top-ranked Jonin, and a Jonin equivalent Yukai. Kakashi stated suddenly. Trial by fire. You're sending us straight into C and B ranks, aren't you, old man? Again the third nodded. I will again offer the chance to withdraw. A pause. Again there were no takers. Very well then. While Kakashi is recovering, I am assigning Team 7 a week-long training mission, with Yamato as acting commander. This induced a wince in the pinkett and blonde. More training? And spending it with the beast as well. Well, at least it was with Sasuke added, the sole female member of the squad. Sasuke was actually slightly excited, though he didn't let it show. Finally, direct tutelage from a field active shinobi. A former Anbu Black Ops as well. If anyone was going to help him up to task in his ambition, then it would be from that core group of elites. A few minutes later they were standing in a familiar training ground. Right, it's time to take you all to task. Sakura, I was told you are an expert on book knowledge but had below average scores in practicals. The red-clad kunoichi bristled at that. Now, that can actually be a good thing. If you are very intelligent but not too strong physically, then the odds suggest you will likely have good chakra control. This will give you a great head start on genjutsu and medical ninjutsu, alongside some of the more finicky ninjutsu that require more control than power. As an example, one of Kakashi's old favorites is a lightning ninjutsu from Cloud he got in the war. It's a little finicky for a combat technique, as unlike most, the more chakra you pump into it the more likely it will backfire, but with enough control, well. He snapped though 5 seals at a semi-blurred pace, then lanced out index and middle fingers out like a gun. Raiden. Byakurai. A horizontal bolt of lighting lanced out and burnt a hole clear through the tree he had pointed at, despite its strong grounding. Sasuke looked interested. He had stuck mostly to Kaiden jutsu, fire being the family specialty, but he had never seen a fire jutsu strike with such speed. Byakurai on average actually only takes a bit more chakra than a dozen normal bunshin. Slightly less than a grand fireball. He directed pointedly at Sasuke. But takes intense control to refine and direct. If you lose control of it, you can easily end up shocking yourself rather painfully, rather than burning a hole through a target. He commented, just like taijutsu, some ninjutsu are simple but effective with raw brute force, but needing considerable power to every use. While at the same time there are others that are complex, highly efficient, but require intense precision, concentration, and control. Genjutsu also follows this. While perfect control is needed to completely master the art, there are some basic illusionary techniques that need nothing more than raw power to overload the senses. A snapped hand sign and at once they were blinded by a snapping flash of light. Naruto recovered first, only moments later blinking harshly, as he noticed Sakura prone and panicking, and Sasuke standing ready with a kunai in hand. Wow, that was cool, sensei. To be honest, he had almost tapped into his yoki there, the sensation had being such a shock. Yamato smirked slightly as the others regained their vision. That was a basic combat genjutsu. Harami, I will be teaching you all shortly. You might find it of particular use, Sasuke. It was originally designed to counter dojutsu. Not that it would work on any Sharingan user if they knew of it. The precognitive abilities of the eyes let the master realize what was happening long enough to close them. Sasuke, however, seemed to have already deduced that by his scowl. Still, it could have its uses. And their teacher had yet to prove himself totally inept. Naruto, you will be learning something different than the others. The former Anbu stated as he locked eyes with the blonde. Chakra control is useless to someone who doesn't have any chakra in the first place. I may be able to suppress yoki, but I have no idea about controlling it otherwise. So while I am showing Sasuke and Sakura a few things, you're going to be doing your best to call out and regulate your own power. Just remember, what works for chakra might not work for you, but then again, it might work after all. He shrugged. The first thing we will be learning is tree climbing. And so it continued. Sakura proved to indeed have near-perfect control. The near being swiftly pounded out of her as Yamato added more and more complex control methods to her agenda. The moment something was mastered, something more was put in front of her, or another thing added. Her reserves increasing drastically with the endless demand even within the short span of time. Sasuke was taught a few fire techniques to his already impressive, for his age, arsenal. Water, earth, and a few scant lightning techniques also added to this as well. Unfortunately, the young Uchiha proved to have no talent whatsoever with wind jutsu. But, as Yamato commented, those techniques are a rarity in Fire Country anyway. His occasional spars with Naruto, mostly in their off hours, an already rare commodity, having boosted his own speed, endurance, and resistance to mental assault, i.e. Naruto's killer intent, drastically via sheer necessity. Naruto's progress was sporadic. At times he would spend days at a time working on various things for no gain. At others he learned things with frightening ease. The inadvertent discovery that while incapable of many jutsu, he was able to totally master those he could to an all but instinctive level with even one use was a major plus. He was also swiftly developing his own version of normal ninja techniques. Something that had irked Sasuke to no end. He was however slowly gaining a hold of himself. It proved to be that his emotions, mostly rage, were intrinsically tied to his power. This was explained to him by Yamato. It turned out that while chakra was an equal mix of kai and kai, the physical and spiritual energies, Yukai was in fact purely spiritual. Demons did not typically have a natural body, being not of this plane of existence. They used their power and their will and enforced their presence onto the world, normally though a medium of some sort. Typically ether possessing some item or creature, including humans often enough, or by simply gathering the dust of the world and shaping themselves a vessel. This was also why demons were inherently immortal. It didn't matter what you did to their body. All you were doing was damaging something that in essence was a puppet. No matter how badly damaged the vessel, the demon itself, effectively immaterial, was immune to all conventional harm. This is why demons were sealed, trapped in a vessel not of their making. It was the only effective method of combating a demon. Well, unless you had another demon on your side who, in theory, could attack it in ways immaterial. Their teamwork was progressing at a fast pace as well. Naruto proving to be an excellent close-range combatant, his ceaseless use of jutsu, inhuman killing intent, healing factor and boulder-shattering strength and speed allowing him to effortlessly dominate. Sasuke and Sakura mostly providing range support in the form of nin and genjutsu, again to the Uchiha's dismay. They were however simply not up to the blonde's level of raw power yet. The fact the blonde was gaining more control over his emotions, and with that, his powers wasn't helping to close that gap. Still they were trying. Naruto jumped down dropping one shoulder slightly as a kunai passed by harmlessly. A feral grin to his demonic visage. Flicking his wrist a trio of stricken each coated in bright blue-white flame. A darker blur shot out of cover, right as the flaming metal cut into bark. Crimson slitted eyes, met crimson human eyes. Though the presence of two rotating comma-like marks on each detracted slightly from the human norm. Hands flashed at a pace invisible to untrained eyes as the scion of the Uchiha clan rose a hand to mouth and spat forth golden flames, tinged with red at their edge, and blue at their core. Sasuke might not have been able to mimic Naruto's techniques, but that didn't mean he couldn't learn from them. By watching the way the young demon's energy flowed in his own fire casting, the brunette had managed to increase the heat and intensity of his own fire jutsu by an entire magnitude. The blonde charged straight, though the flames, moving in a blur, clawed hands lashing out in swift animalistic swipes. It was simple and brutal, no finesse outside of natural grace, but at the speeds that the blonde was moving he didn't need anything but that. The dark blur started swinging on the spot, spine contorting like a serpent as he swayed in and out of place, legs always moving on the retreat. He had improved drastically, but right now it was only his bloodline's perception-altering abilities that were keeping him from experiencing what many fruit had at the mercy of a high-powered blender. Come on Sakura, don't have all day here. There was no use trying to block the swipes with kunai. Experience had long since proven that the weaponized gardening trowels wouldn't hold for even a moment to those claws. All at once Naruto started swinging wildly, where before he was missing by millimeters, he was now missing by centimeters, then more. The Uchiha didn't need to guess what was happening and swiftly darted back full speed gaining ground away from the swinging blades of doom. His opponent would notice in moments that he wasn't fighting the real him, and he need to milk this window for all he could. Rooting himself to a tree branch he started flashing those seals as fast as he could. Right as the blonde's brow knotted and nostrils dilated. Swinging a hand Naruto unleashed a wave of yoki-charged wind, slicing Sasuke, and several trees behind him. The mass unleash of the destructive energy dispelling the illusion just in time to see his real target unleash a lightning-fast dragon made up of the namesake element. A thunderous cracking sound screaming out as he jumped the strike, grinning and inhaling as one hand grew red as he crashed down, slamming the charged limb to the ground. For a split second nothing seemed to happen. Then at once Sasuke jumped, evading the newly grown branches of the tree he was standing on. Unfortunately, he hadn't predicted the kitsune to unleash a more subtle attack to strike right in the wake of the sneak attack. An energy-charged roar slamming into him like a wall and pinning him to another tree behind him. Crap! The blonde approached slowly, triumph gleaming in his slitted eyes, sapphire bleeding into the ruby color that signified the use of his power. Ready to give up now, Teme? I snagged Sakura with the same tree bind I got you with. He grinned. Really? Asked a Swedish voice from behind. Blue eyes flashed in shock as the orange-clad ninja dodged swiftly, a kunai biting into his shoulder as he did. His hand flashed out and at once he pushed and pinned the pink-haired kunoichi to the ground. Damn it, he cursed. That had been a close one. Close, very close. You should feel proud. I know a lot of chunin who couldn't last that long. Came the eye-smiling reply of their original sensei. Then again, that was largely due to your overconfidence there, Naruto. What did I say about declaring yourself the winner? Don't assume anything until they're dead. And make absolute certain they're dead. He monotoned. And always be wary of any unknown enemies. Kakashi added. If this was a real mission, you could have easily lost your head there. He smiled, and Sakura. What have I told you about alerting an enemy about an attack? The pinkette sighed. Never let the enemy hear you, even if you think you have them cornered. Right. He nodded slightly. While reflexes on that level are rare, you will encounter people on occasion that can avoid with even a millimeter of a strike. Others will have defenses that can be raised at a moment's notice. The Hyuga's ultimate defense sprang to mind. Still, regardless of some flaws that still need to be ironed out here and there, I'd say you're about ready, continued the gray-haired man. All three immediately perked up. They had been asking for missions for a while now. Every time Yamato and Kakashi had turned down the requests, citing, "You're not ready yet." Could their enigmatic sensei mean that they were finally ready to do what that they had been endlessly trained for? Team 7, this is your mission. This is officially a C-rank mission, began the Mokuton user to his attentive audience. The games had begun. The mission was a simple one of the several trade routes between Kahona and its surrounding farming communities had come under harassment of a roving band of highwaymen. Due to the long-standing arrangement between the ninja village and the rural farmers, Kahona was obligated to take care of it pro bono. This resulted in a C-class mission with only the minimum pay. A job normally taken by a chunin with a group of more experienced genin for a little extra cash and practice. Team 7 was at the moment shadowing a caravan of traders to accomplish their primary objective. Not the protection of the traders, though this was secondary goal, but the complete and utter annihilation of this band of thieves. Dobi reporting in. I don't see anything. I am kicking your ass for this, Sasuke. Spoke the only Bond into his radio set. Fangirl reporting. No sign of enemy contact. The pinkette chimed with some annoyance. Avenger checking in. Something's a little off up ahead. Requesting permission to move in, stated the younger brunette of the team with absolute smugness. That's a no-go, Avenger. Link up with Dobi and Fangirl before entering possible hostile zone, stated a relaxed voice from one of the two members actually traveling with the caravan itself. Suitably disguised, of course, the final less conventional member of Team 7 finally added his share. Lazy is right. I'll break off and join you. Until then, hold position. A bit gruffed, the younger Sharingan user nevertheless gave in. He had been well conditioned at this point to listen to his superior's orders. Understood. Creepy. Location is grid 24 by 32, elevation 16 by marker A, he stated. Roger. Came the near unanimous reply as Creepy broke off from the caravan under the guise of entering one of the carts, and Dobi and Fangirl simply tree-hopped to their teammates' location while the young Avenger waited. He did not have to wait for long. Right, bastard, what do you have for us? Grumbled Naruto. He hated it when Sasuke got one up on him. The Uchiha never hesitated to rub his face into it. Genjutsu, came the reply, his eyes flashing crimson in silent explanation. Sakura was very quiet in her response. You're sure? Even as the Uchiha nodded, Yamato narrowed his eyes. He's right. There are chakra signatures well above that of a bandits out there. This mission just jumped to B rank, he stated. He considered something for a moment, then exhaled. Unfortunately, we're too deep to pull out. Any major chakra spike and we might be spotted. Everyone go to radio silence. We will have to catch them by surprise. A shiver of excitement ran through the blonde. A real battle. This was the type of thing he had trained so long and hard for. He managed to restrain himself, however. Yes, keep a hold of those instincts, must be a good boy, yes. In Hidden Rain, a man in black with a orange spiraling mask suddenly sneezed violently right while he was playing with his pots and pans. The short moment he lost total control of his body, he slipped and bashed his head on the table. A loud ringing echoing out from the pot on his head. "Madara-sama!" exclaimed a pain in shock and fear as eccentric leader fell to the ground in a heap. The masked man rubbed his head. "Oi. Toby has a headache." Pain blinked. "Madara-sama?" He knew that the ancient Uchiha had a few issues, it was to be expected with immortality. But wasn't he carrying this cover identity a little far? "Madara-sama? Who is that leader senpai?" blinked the masked man. He looked around. "I can't see anyone." Oh, is he invisible senpai? Toby wishes he could become invisible. Rippling eyes blinked again in confusion, before a sudden, horrifying, realization occurred. Oh, this isn't good. Toby tilted his head. What's wrong? Did Toby do something wrong? Back with Team 7, Naruto grinned. The plan was simple, brutal, and just plain effective. It was in essence the old plan. Only now with the inclusion of him at center point. Right, well. Rather, he was going to be playing tank, psychological artillery again. But hey, if you did something well, right? Roshi frowned slightly from his spot in the trees. He and his fellow, missing, Cloud Nin had been harassing Kahona supply lines for the last 2 months. Looking to both weaken their chief rivals' economics and to hopefully draw out some underprepared genin teams for the slaughter. Despite the seeming logistics, the latter was actually what warranted the risk of he and his Chunin squad more than the former. The Chunin exams were rolling around, and every team of the low-ranked nin they could cripple or elsewise neutralize was one less that could participate. Considering the slight danger involved, and the multiple objectives, only a senior genin team would be sent. It was too much a hassle for the rating to send anything more, and too much danger for a rookie team to go. Normally taking out such a group of genin would not be worth the risk. But it was Kahona's rotation for the exam. And if they could box the host village down to a handful of contestants, then they could deal massive damage to their future sales. There was reason to the fact that military commanders studied logistics just as hardly as they did tactics. But something was wrong. The convoy had reached the ambush point. In fact, it has outright stopped dead. Wait, no, that wasn't entirely true. One figure had broken off from it and was walking up the path. The figure in question was shortish, a blonde, and currently wearing a bright orange kimono like some lord. The sheathed short sword added to this effect. He was walking right up to the ambush point, eyes closed and a smile. This was needless to say drawing considerable attention from the others. Those among them with a talent for it signaled a lack of any significant chakra prescience, but something about the kid was giving them the creeping horrors. It was when he reached there that the source of those feelings, as bright blue eyes opened. "Hi there." Immediately 2 of his men were spilled onto the roar, one the victim to a very intense fire jutsu, while the other had received the basic kunai to the spine. The first man was still screaming, rolling on the ground as his flesh and fat lit up like a candle, but the fire would not go out. The rest started to move when it suddenly hit them. Death, murder, kill, die, death. Eviscerated, decapitatoriptopices, death. Suffer, break, pray for death. Wallow in dispare. Maki, his partner of 2 years, a man who had fought everything from bandits to nin, was the first to be introduced to the Kahona no Akuma. His screaming was halted the moment he was impaled to a tree, though a branch, thrown from his split entrails like some perverse bolo. The orange-clad thing had appeared in front of him and ripped open his side like it was paper, grabbing a handful of intestines and swinging him around before the stretchable organs couldn't take the stress and snapped. Now he was pinned to an oak, bleeding out, gurgling on his own blood, impaled though the lung, eyes wide in shock and denial. Suki got a much kinder fate. His former lover simply took a claw to the face, the fierce backhand ripping off flesh, smashing through bone, and sending her half-decapitated crops flying to the ground. He couldn't tell if it was a mercy that he didn't have to view the life drain from her eyes. This was hampered by the fact that she no longer had them. The nausea was overtaking him. They had no chance. They were just going to be butchered. The lucky would be fast, the not so lucky. Maki gave one final hacking cough of blood before stilling. He reached for his pouch, pulling a kunai. Die fighting. Yes, he had to avenge his friends. If only he could just move. Pain. And what were you going to do with that? Shaking, half frozen with fear, he looked over into red slitted eyes. Out of the corner of his eyes, realizing the flesh was cooking from his arm. The kunai half melted into his hand. He opened his mouth to scream. Sakura shuddered as a wail of absolute terror. Madness echoed over the engagement zone. She had fought against, with Naruto enough by now to be able to shrug off his aura of death, but it was worming its way against her. This combined with the nervousness of her part of this act was sending shivers through her form. She had the man tapped in the genjutsu. She could feel the anchors holding root in his chakra system. It was almost addictive what she could do now. She was directing his every movement. Not directly of course, but she was the one who dictated what he saw and heard. The reactions were easy to predict from that point. So he danced a little dance for her, falling ever deeper into her trap. The agitation of his mind and chakra was only making it easier to dig deeper roots into them. She added another layer, smell, as she noted the smell of burnt human, blood, and death starting to creep up. The man was now looking around wildly, terrified. Say what you would about Naruto's speed and strength, it was his aura that was the most deadly in her eyes. The ability to simply look at people and break them, for lack of a better term. It was something that terrified her, and something she secretly envied. Dropping down, she approached the now standing man silently, and drew forth 3 kunai. She couldn't risk getting close. Not with how he was thrashing. And one hit would dispel the illusion. Gulping down the growing bile, she lifted her hand, and threw with all her force. The man jerked, staggering a step as reality half phased back into sight around him. Half because he couldn't see out of his left eye. Drawing more projectiles, she sent another set into the man's mauled form. He was in shock. Whether from surprise or the chunk of steel halfway shoved into his skull, she wasn't sure. But he wouldn't go down. These were lethal blows. For a moment she flashed back to a time Naruto had accidentally impaled himself on Earth technique, and simply healed from it. She felt a flash of fear. The man let out a whimpering yelp before he fell to the ground. His body twitching as it fought to survive its fatal injuries, and failed. It was only moments before he stilled entirely. Sakura couldn't help it. She fell to her hands and knees and wretched. The crimson wheels of the Sharingan span as Sasuke ducked a thrown kunai. The woman in front of him was in a panic. No surprise, the dobi had that effect on people. He idly wondered how resistant Itachi would be to the Foxboy's effects before flashing through jutsu. Golden white flames shot forth in a stream moments later. The woman evaded, but in her panic did not cover herself fast enough. A kunai sunk into her skull and she fell like a puppet with its stings cut. Seemingly for no reason, the Uchiha dodged to the side, flashing another jutsu set before unleashing a blindingly fast lightning bolt into the hidden genjutsu user in a tree 15 feet away. It was his 5th kill of the day. Again he mused at how many of these pathetic nin were. Yamato had said there were 10. Sakura was sent to dispose of the group's spotter, while Yamato acted as general oversight and backup if needed. Specifically for the dobi. Speaking of the kitsune, he looked over and spotted a sight that would send many to the nearest toilet. Naruto was crouched over nin number 10, who was pinned to a 3 by his left claw, while his right simply scratched at his form. The strokes themselves were barely brushes, but the destructive yoki enveloping them was removing a layer of flesh with each swipe. His intestines were already split to the ground, sticky half-decayed blood sprayed all over his lower half. The yokai had a look of feral interest on his face, like that of a cat looking down at a mouse. Yo dobi, snap out of it. He yelled over as he glanced over at his finished kills. Forming a hand seal, a set of clones walked over for confirmation. Always a good idea, as you never knew when a person was faking or had some sort of deathman switch. Both looked up and shook their heads, dispelling into dirt. Naruto looked up at the Uchiha, and blinked once or twice, human intelligence slowly seeping to the surface as his features regressed. He looked down at the body before him in shock, seemingly just realizing what had happened before backing away from it. Sorry, thanks Sasuke, I kind lost it back there. The prodigy humphed at that. Of course you did, dobi. And don't break code, there might be one alive somewhere. Naruto tilted his head, I don't think so. At the least I can't smell them. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. You could smell someone over all this? He waved a hand. The blonde grinned. Yep. It's easy. I mean Fangirl and Creepy are already headed here. He pointed out to the west. Sure enough, moments later their forms were seen tree-hopping over. Sasuke again sneered slightly in annoyance. Seems you have some use after all, Dobi. A growl was the response. Shut up, Teme. I can kick your ass any day of the week. The Uchiha smirked. Yeah, but at least I can control myself when I'm in a fight. You're nothing but an overgrown mutt. The growl deepened. Not helping your case, Dobi. He added as his teammate and tactical advisor dropped down between them. Sakura was looking shaken, something that again snapped Naruto out of it, though he sent a non-verbal, "This isn't over," to his rival before trying to comfort her. It helped that all the blood and gore was burned away from him. She still flinched, however. Kakashi looked up from his lounging spot. "Ma, I take it things went well then?" he asked. Looking up from his book, Yamato dropped a pile of slashed forehead protectors. Ether clouds become much more lax with their hunter nin, or they're up to their old tricks again. Yamato stated. The Hokage will want to look at that. He stated before giggling. The team hold up? Yamato sighed as he sat down. Partly. Naruto's still an issue, but he's getting better. He can at least now snap out of it with a familiar voice. Sakura had it a bit rough with her first kill, and Sasuke. I'm actually mostly worried about him. He fought with great skill and ease. Half of those things are his. But at the same time, he was far too comfortable taking a life for a newbie. Kakashi frowned behind his mask. That could be a problem. Alright, when we get back I'll let the PSYC boys take a look at him. He's a bit overdue anyway. He looked back down into his book, turning the page. Anything else? Yeah, we did our jobs too well. Anything below B rank is a waste. Even if they're rookies. They cut though a oversized Chunin squad like wheat at a harvest. It was actually frightening, he stated, giving the impression of relaxation as he sat back to join his fellow Jonin. Kakashi smirked. So we did good, eh? Hokage will like that at least. Yamato shook his head. I'm not sure about that. He asked us to make a team of skilled heavy combat experts. Kakashi rose an eyebrow. And isn't that what we made? Yamato paused as he pulled out a flask. Perhaps. The lazy Jonin refocused once more on his favorite, reading his favorite book. And what else could they be? Killers, he stated, sipping from the sweet water inside. Kakashi shrugged. Well, we'll all become them eventually. The only response was a silent nod. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.